Hey, this is Ross from Qualtrics. I was just going to go through how to use Postman and just running through the response export workflow. So the first things first, here is the response export workflow. It is the combination of three API calls. The first one to actually create the export, the second one to check the progress of that export, and finally the third one to actually get the zip file. In the response export workflow, it is worth noting that every export file is going to be zipped. That out of the way, let's go back and we're going to create a JSON file for the response export. So within the API documentation, you'll see that your base URL is given here. You'll see the HTTP verb given right there. And then finally, you'll see all the parameters that are available for the call listed here. In this case, these are all body parameters, so they would be in the body. Finally, you'll see the curl example towards the middle of the call. Especially when using Postman, it's extremely useful to just copy that curl example and then go into Postman, click on import, click on paste raw file, and paste it in here, and then click import. And now what that's going to do is that's going to format your call exactly as Postman requires it, which is in the authorization section, in your header, you're going to be giving your API token as well as the content type. The content type is really only useful when you're passing in a body for the request. In this case, you're passing in the request body as JSON, as a JSON object, and that's why the content type in here is JSON, is application/JSON. For all of the APIs in V3, you're always going to get a JSON object returned back to you, and that's just something that you should know. In addition to that, next to the base URL is going to be all the verbs that you can, or rather the methods, the HTTP methods that you have access to. Again, the curl example said post, and that's exactly what Postman put it as. The other thing to note about the API call is that your data center should actually be switched, especially for response exports, into the data center of your account. Typically, you can tell between the logins, or in my case, login and Qualtrics is usually where the data center ID is listed. My account is on CA1. So to make my API requests faster, so it doesn't proxy through a bunch of different data centers to find the data, all you have to do is switch that to the data center itself. So finally, I can paste in my API token in there, in the body of my request, the survey ID, put in my survey ID. Oh, don't need to save that. But then I click send. Perfect. And then you'll see the return down here. And then it'll also give me an export ID. So here's the things to note about this call. Once you create the response export, there are still two other calls that you would need to run. The second call is right here, and the third call. The second call is the response export progress call. So response exports in general are asynchronous. So in this case, what that means is once you create the response export, your program doesn't have to wait for any returns. You can continue with your program, continue with your script. You can periodically hit that export ID that's returned to you, which is this ID that I've highlighted here, and you'll get a progress return back to you. And once it's 100%, you can finally download the file. So let's copy that. Oh, Command C. And then I already have a library of requests here. So let me pull up the progress call, and then finally the last call. Oh, actually, we don't have to worry about that. So in the progress call, you'll see my URL here. One of the file paths, which is specified right here, the path param, right? You're going to be taking that response export ID that we just got and pasting it in here. So this is the export ID. And then just to make sure, my header, I have to make sure that it's the right token, because again, I'm authenticating through the header. Click send, and we'll see that it's 100% complete, meaning I can download it. And then finally, it also gives me a JSON object that hosts the final URL to actually get the file. And you'll notice that the file parameter is just /file at the end. So I can also copy that. Hang on. Let me just copy that. And then I could paste it in here, or if I just go to the next call, which is a response export file, I can copy that JSON object again, or sorry, the curl example. Ooh. Paste it, import, and you'll notice that at the end of the call, it'll say file. So let me grab the export ID that I had before, copy, paste it right there, make sure my data center is correct, make sure, I don't need this actually, but I do need to make sure my API token is correct. And then finally, in Postman, to actually download the zip file, you would, instead of send, you would click on this drop-down menu and click send and download. And then it's going to return to you this. It's going to say, do you want to save it as? Or do you want to save as the file? Which is yes. And once you do that, you can open up your downloads, unzip the file, especially on Macs, it's super easy. On Windows, you can use WinRAR or any other program, especially if you're on an older Windows. And then you can open up your file, and then here are your response exports. So it is a bit more of an elongated process, but it is asynchronous, and if you have a ton of responses you're trying to download, you won't run into any timeout errors because you won't have to wait for any return to be given back to you because you're given that progress ID. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.